What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the same. And right now, I'm feeling like 100 grand.
You are listening to Inspired Insider with your host, Dr. Jeremy Weisz.
Dr. Jeremy Weisz here, founder of InspiredInsider.com, where I talk with inspirational entrepreneurs and leaders. Today is no different. We have Ruben Dua of Dubb.com. It's DUBB.com. Check it out. Before I formally introduce Ruben, I want to just point out several other episodes people should check out. Ruben, I've had a number of SaaS founders over the past decade on the podcast. The founder of Zapier, check that one out. That was really interesting. I had Pipedrive. They had, I think, 10,000 customers at the time. Now they think they have over 100,000 customers. AWeber was on there. And then Gavin Zaklinski, who started Acuity Scheduling, he sold to Squarespace. That was one of my favorites, Ruben. He was a master at user experience and onboarding free users and turning them into paid customers. I love that episode. And we'll talk about your onboarding process. I signed up for Dubb, and it's a pretty cool, streamlined onboarding process. So we'll definitely talk about that. And this episode is brought to you by Rise 25. At Rise 25, we help businesses give to and connect to their Dream 100 relationships. And how do we do that? We actually help you run your podcast. We are an easy button for a company to launch and run their podcast. We provide strategy, accountability, and full execution. And for me, Ruben, the number one thing in my life is relationships. I'm always looking at ways to give to my best relationships. And I found no better way to do that than over the past decade to profile the people in companies I most admire and profile them and share with the world what they're working on. So if you've thought about podcasting, you should. Ruben and their company actually has a podcast too. You can check it out. More information at rise25.com. Email us. We're happy to answer any questions that you have. So I'm excited. We have Ruben Dua. He's a co-founder and CEO of Dubb, which is a popular video sales platform that helps businesses 30x. So originally, when I read that, I was thinking about it, I was like 3x. No, it's possibly 30x, which is amazing. And they work with 65,000 plus businesses, including well-known organizations, Keller Williams, Grant Cardone, Fannie Mae, and many more, whose sales teams use the platform to produce personalized video messages that boost connections, conversions, and revenues. And they have a number of amazing features that I was reading, Ruben, that's like calendar integrations and SMS campaigns and stuff that's like, as a standalone in itself is amazing, like two-way SMS messaging. So we're going to get into some of these features, how you decide to actually release these, because they probably take a lot of time, energy to just do one of those things. And Ruben has over 20 years of marketing experience. He's also the author of Click Record, How Overcoming Fear, Storytelling, and Video Marketing Can Change Your Life. Ruben, thanks for joining me.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for that introduction. It has been a true evolution of this entire process. And really, it just starts with listening. We've been listening. We've had these huge, big, fat Dumbo ears, and just kind of gauging what people are saying, what our user base is saying. We try to listen as much as we can. Not every feature recommendation that we get, we have to implement, obviously. But there are very specific reasons behind everything that we've built at the platform. So thank you so much for noticing that.
I think maybe that's the title of your next book, Listening, The Road to a $3 billion exit or something, right? But talk about the evolution of the technology, where it started and how it's progressed.
Well, the earliest story of how this whole build a landing page with a video on it actually scales back way earlier than the founding story of Dubb, which is 2018. It goes back to when I was a kid and the whole internet was starting to get off the ground. And I was just a small kid, young. I was, a teenager at the time, trying to make sense of all this stuff, and I realized that obviously the internet was just going to change everything. One of the first startups that I built, it was a sort of a social profile. Actually, it was back in 1995 or 4 or something. It was a long time ago, and it was an early social network. And I
was Friendster even existing at that time? I don't even remember.
Like before a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
The premise though is I remember the first time I put an animated GIF on a landing page, and I was like, animated GIFs on landing pages are going to change everything. And then the moment came when I was able to embed a video on a landing page. And the way to do it back then was nasty. It was very gnarly. It had a huge file. It was an MOV file. It was a, WMV, some really old antiquated formats. And then you'd have to embed those on a page. And then as a result, someone could watch a video. And then making it actionable and having them click to another place and do another thing and book a time and a calendar. Obviously none of those things were possible at the time. But just this idea of creating a landing page as a clone to a human being or to a story or to a short film or whatever have you, I realized that was really going to change everything. And since that realization, I've absolutely been on that path. And now, we see ourselves helping now. We've had over 70,000 people sign up for the Dub platform since we started.
Wow.
These are people in sales. These are people that run agencies. These are solopreneurs, SMBs. We have Fortune 500 clients, and they're all really trying to do one simple thing, which is, how do I create more relationships? How do I capture my essence, capture my story, connect with someone via content, via landing page, via calls to action, integrations on a page, and how do I streamline the whole communication process? And that's exactly what we've committed to doing. And it's been a hell of a ride. I'm having the time of my life right now. I'm working really hard. Again, listening, building and growing. And really at the end of the day, our success is all rooted in other people's success. Because at the end of the day, when you build a sales platform, it really doesn't matter what the features are. It doesn't matter what the tech is. It matters how much people are growing in terms of specifically revenue and income. So we're rooted to that.
Ruben, talk about some of those inflection points where you talk about listening, right? And what someone told you that shifted the product or a feature.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because in the pre-meeting you asked, should you mention one of the startups before Dub that I had started called Spreeify? And I was like, you know what? Let's not mention that. It's kind of not relevant for this. And maybe it is relevant because the failures that we go through in order to get to the successes, we don't talk about those. Sometimes we don't want to talk about them. Sometimes people don't ask about them, but they are absolutely on our path. The obstacle is the way, as I like to say, and that's an old
Ryan
proverb
Holiday.
from
This book, but yeah.
Yeah, and that's a beautiful thing. And I think that this idea of failing forward is really important. I think one of the biggest problems that happens in entrepreneurship and technology development is this idea where an entrepreneur, someone determines that there is a problem in the marketplace and then determines that they have the viable solution to solve that. And then they go to the marketplace thinking that just because they want a machine that puts the cream cheese on the bagel automatically, that everyone else is going to want that, and then they go to the marketplace and they realize that this device for $100, which is super difficult to clean, is not embraced by the market whatsoever. And as a result, it's like a failure. And the problem with and this is a story rooted in listening. The problem is that the problem here is not how to put cream cheese on the bagel. The problem is how to save time in the morning and how to streamline the morning process, and if you understand really what the core problem is, then you can actually figure out a solution and say, okay, well, maybe it's not something that puts the cream cheese on the bagel. Maybe it's just the bagel cutter, because when I use a knife, it makes a mess and I can cut my fingers. And maybe it's just the bagel chopper, and boom, you got a bagel chopper. And if you can get a patent on that, or if you can get first to market and distribute that, then you're doing really well. But I think the idea and the point here, though, is that, we can have a general essence of what is broken. But if we think that we have the entire solution ourselves, that's maybe arrogant. And the better solution is to listen and to figure out what is it that people are actually going through.
Yeah, focusing on the benefits as opposed to the feature sets, like you were saying, like focusing on this is the benefit and maybe iterating based on the benefit, not the feature. With Dub, what were people saying early on that shifted what you were doing?
Well, I think that in the beginning, it started with how can I get people to just read my emails and respond to my emails? That was the first problem that we were trying to solve. That email is the cheapest, freest way to run your sales, period. There's no better, cheaper way to do it. social media is amazing. Live webinars, podcasts, it's all amazing. But emails, you can literally go to a company, you can download a list of 1 million emails and start cold emailing them and just praying that someone's going to respond. And it's not easy because it's become very difficult, with domain technology and the way that it sort of blocks, mass emails. But the point was that getting those email responses was very difficult. And the instant realization, which is not rocket science, is that when we add humanity to the process of communication, that people are going to ignore you less. I mean, just think about it for a second. If you pop into an elevator or a coffee shop and someone says hello, if you have decent manners, you're going to say hello back. You're not going to ignore that person. But to ignore an email, on the other hand, you don't have to have good manners. You can have the best manners on the planet and delete or ignore an email, and you're good, right? Because that's just not the etiquette. It's not the expectation in our society. But the second that you add a smiling face, like when you sent me a dub video, I was like, okay, I wanted to reply to you like immediately on the spot, because I was like, I'm not going to ignore this. This is amazing, And just think about how powerful that is. It's all that we're doing is bringing ourselves, right? So that was problem number one. And then problem number two is, okay, great. Now we have a response. Well, now how do we get, like, what's the next thing in our funnel? Like, okay, well, we need bookings. We need people to go to our website and fill out that form or book a time in my calendar. Acuity Scheduler, it's a great calendar program, just like Calendly, and, there's so many on the market. And we sort of realized we need to go and create deep partnerships with them, which is why we created a partnership with Acuity and all the other ones. And now calendar integrations. So now people are booking times at people's calendars. So think about that for a second. Before, you had a hard time getting a response from the person, but then when you did, hey, let's book a time. Okay, when works? Tuesday at 7. No, let's do Thursday at 4. Back and forth. And then now all of a sudden, instant calendar booking. So that's the next thing. And then we started to just keep going down.
You were like eliminating these friction points, it seems like.
Right. So it was just, how do we take out friction from this sales process, right? And we ended up, and we're still going, we haven't stopped, but we ended up saying, well, how can you take a credit card? How can you actually go through a contract? How can you actually go do a screen video using the Dub Chrome extension or desktop app, where you do a contract walkthrough, have a call to action that goes to a digital sign link, and the person can actually watch a video of you doing a contract walkthrough and then doing a digital signature and completing the contract all asynchronously. So just for the people that are running agencies out there, I know what the sales cycles look like. For every digit that you add to the contract amount, it could be another 6 months of waiting time. I know the loyalty issues. I know that it's like you're only as good as your last campaign. It doesn't matter what you did in the past. Like I know some of those challenges because I've worked in the agency world, and I've run agencies, and I've worked for larger agencies, and it's not easy. Just think what you can do with video.
I want to talk, Ruben, we'll get into some of the mistakes, because you mentioned about bringing the humanity back to the process. So in a second, I want to talk about mistakes people make with outreach. But before we get there, I want to know some of the things you learned. I know you have worked, like you said, at some big agencies before, Scorpion being one of them. And I'd love to hear some of the learnings from Scorpion.
Yeah. Scorpion is a fantastic company, Inc. 5000 company, based at the time I was there. They were based in Santa Clarita, which is ironically now where I live. So in my building where I have a terrace, I can overlook and actually see that building where I used to be employed, and which is kind of interesting and kind of cool. It's sort of a memory. But what's so interesting is that, this is a 200-person sales team at the time. And, the rhetoric was, it's hard to get people to respond to our emails. It's hard to get calendar bookings like before. There's a lot of competitors. When we go to these trade shows, there's competitors, there's, online vendors, there's overseas vendors, there's low cost people, there's, industry specific ones. So, competition was fierce, which I think is just natural in the marketplace. So the question really was, how do you differentiate yourself? And how do you, as a salesperson, how do you go get that response? And I remember one of the sales reps that sent a first, I think it was a screen video of a proposal, got a 1-day close on a 5-digit deal. And that was almost unheard of. and it was like signed on the spot. And I was like, wow, there's something here. There's something here. The largest deal that I have heard signed via Dub, it's less than 10 million. We have a couple of Fortune 500 clients. I don't have a specific amount, but there have been some really large deals that have taken place via this type of communication. And I wish I had more specifics, and I really wish I got a commission on these. But that, unfortunately, is not how our pricing structure works.
Maybe we'll change that for enterprise, right? So you cut your teeth at Scorpion. There are any other, I don't know, from a structure standpoint, like leadership structure of the company, because you really learned from inside, because I don't know how many, what was like around the staff level at Scorpion? Is it like in the 500, 600 people? 600,
yeah.
Was there anything that you took from just observing, whether it's the culture or the structure of the organization, that you took to Dub?
Well, I think one of the things that I think is really important when we think about leadership, when we think about structure, is this idea of having an open communication, a transparent vibe within a company. And the reason why that's really important is because the people that are on the front lines of the business, like the sales reps and the account managers, they're the ones that are, again, going back to listening, they're the ones that are speaking to customers. They're the ones that are getting the objections. They're the ones that are getting the rejections, And by taking that information and having that sort of sprinkle throughout the DNA of the company, we can make improvements. So if there's no communication or ill communication between that type of customer listening and the architects of the business, then things start to fall apart. So I think what we always have tried to do, any organization I've ever been a part of, I've always tried to say, listen, this is what the customers are saying, and now what are we going to do with it? So I think that's one of the biggest takeaways that I have now is, transparency, communication, and then taking that feedback and then turning it into fuel, data that blooms and blossoms the company. Your objections, if you understand your objections in a business, it's one of the most valuable things that you can do. Like one of the things that we do, we have a low churn rate, right? Relative to the industry. It's like a 6% churn rate, which I'm proud of, but when people do cancel for whatever reason, we always do a deep interview. There's a survey, we call them, we text them, we're like, what happened? What went wrong? And, we gather that information, and then that information we go reinvest back into the business and try to figure out, okay, well, there was a glitch on, Windows 3.0, and we should go, do a build for that, or just say we don't support that. And then boom, we're making improvements, So we try to just constantly, it's this feedback loop. There's a lot of really great books on this, Lean Startup. There's a lot of books on sort of 360 feedback. So I'm definitely a student of this space.
Let's talk about some of the mistakes people make with outreach, right? Obviously, you have, someone using Dub, it's a very personalized video message. And I know I've heard, I suggest people check out your YouTube channel. You have some great videos there on the sales process and how you can really use video. And, you're a big proponent on doing deep research. A little research goes a long way a lot of times. But what are some of the mistakes you see people making?
I first, when I say the mistakes that I see people making, I'm going to start with myself with this, just because I don't want to come from a place where I'm pointing my finger at other people making mistakes, because I have made a lot of these mistakes myself. So I do want to start with some accountability here and some humility. But I remember being in a boiler room situation in a startup, actually the one that you mentioned, Spreeify, and I remember being in a massive scarcity mindset. We don't have enough pipeline. We don't have enough leads. We don't have enough revenue. There's no growth. Our business model was terribly flawed because we didn't have a recurring revenue model. And it was really stressful for us because we never knew if we were going to get our paycheck. And ironically, one of the interesting things about running an agency, if in my opinion, if you're not doing it the right way, is where you're fronting the cash for the ad spend for the client, and then you have to go do a net 30, which actually turns out to be net 90, sometimes net 120 if you really get grinded. And all of a sudden you become a bank. You become like the world's worst bank. You're just fronting other people's money. And then if for some reason that they say that there's been no results and we're not going to pay, then you're really screwed. The reason why I'm saying all this is because that type of stress, that type of financial stress for founders, or it permeates through the entire culture of the business. And if you have this scarcity mindset, if you have this, fear mindset about how am I going to get paid and how am I going to drive revenue, then you start to act desperate. And desperation is one of those things where it's so interesting when you think about desperation, because it functions in a very similar way to the way that olfactory senses operate. And what I mean by that is that in early mankind, if a little family is in a little cave and there's some stench in that cave, no one's actually going to smell that because the way that our nose and our olfactory senses work is that we sense delta, we sense change. So if we're used to smelling like this every single day, we just smell normal. It's a survival thing that happens. So when we're desperate, we can't smell the desperation on us, but boy, does it reek to other people. And now let's dissect that a little bit. What does desperation look and feel like? Well, it's long emails. It's emails that are, overthought. It's emails that are selfish with the word I too much, that lack empathy, that lack value, that lack an understanding of what the other person is going through, that lack the research, the necessary research required to understand what a prospect is and what they're going through. Instead of saying, I do this and I've done this and I've worked with all these companies and I'm amazing, instead of actually focusing on what the other person is going through based on the research that you've done, because you've had the time, the abundance mindset to give you the time to understand them. If you mix all that together with desperation, it's just not good. Let's think abundantly. Let's invest the time. Let's bring the humanity back. Let's actually not go for the sale. Let's not go for the kill. Let's actually go for the relationship. Let's not close more deals. Let's open more relationships.
Love it. Let's talk about a real world example and what someone did. Chris is a good example.
Yeah.
What happened with Chris?
Kirkpatrick? Yeah, Chris Kirkpatrick, life180.com. He's a great life coach. He had a really interesting story, and actually I have my Kindle here, so let me grab it. Here's my Kindle. But what he did was, he's an old time Dub subscriber, and he's had some great wins on the platform. And he had his, you mentioned your Dream 100, right? And I think he references a book, and I unfortunately, I can't remember the book right now that he references, but is it called Dream 100?
Maybe Chet Holmes
Bingo.
Talked about Dream 100. Yeah.
Bingo. That's the book right there. Thank you so much. I have not read that book, but I intend to. So he said, look, I've got my Dream 100.
I had Amanda Holmes on the podcast talking. Her dad, unfortunately, passed away, but she talked about the book, and I think they did a new edition to the book. I think it's called The Ultimate Sales Machine.
Boom. There it is.
It's about the Dream 100. Yeah.
There it is. Perfect. So when we think about the Dream 100, my interpretation of that is, who are our 100 dream clients, right? These are our ideal client profile. The contract size is good. Cultural fit's great. Everything's spot on, right? So now how do we go turn 100 into 10 meetings and then close 2 of those meetings? It's a 2% conversion rate, right? How do we go do that, right? So his premise was, let me go and use Dub, send video messages from my phone as a one touch point, of my screen as a second touch point, showing very specifically what that company is going through, like going to their website, going to their press releases, doing narrated screen videos, explaining how he could actually help in this whole process. And then the third thing that he did was to actually take his videos, upload them to Kindles, an Amazon Kindle device. This is $60. You can actually get these for $60. You can actually get them for even like $30 refurbished on eBay, apparently. And you can upload a video to a Kindle. You can send it in a nicely packaged box. You have to put some click me here and then swipe up, because that's the first thing that you want the person to do when they open this gift, this corporate gift. You want them to click the button and then swipe up, and then boom, the video is playing of you explaining how you can provide value to them, right? Non-salesy, relationship focused. And then, of course, he followed up with some more video emails using Dub, which was great. He got the activity reporting, so you could actually see when people were watching the videos, and then he knew when to pick up the phone. And then he landed the YouTube video that we did, how to land a $3.4 million deal, which is on our YouTube channel, Rev Show. The contract was $3.4 million, but actually very recently, a week ago, last Wednesday, in our webinar, he actually told us that contract is now $10 million, because now it's been some time and they've renewed multiple times and they've expanded the contract. So actually the video should be called How to Close a $10 million deal.
Got to update that. So what did he do? Talk about the video itself. So what in the video that he put on the Kindle?
Yeah.
What
so it was an introductory video. He did plenty of research. One of the things that I think makes your podcast what it is because of the research that you've done. And, I had a chance to kind of research your research and research the shows that you've done. And obviously the reason why you've landed the guests that you have with all those amazing names is because you put time in and you understand people, and it's that relationship build. And that's just continued to kind of scale itself. And how impressive is that? So congratulations to you. It's very impressive.
Thank you.
But I think the key here, and I'm preaching to the choir, is research. Understanding who is this person, what are their goals professionally, personally, what sports teams are they into? Like, do you want to buy them some Cubs tickets? Do you want to send them a video, a YouTube video of something interesting that happened at the Super Bowl? What is it that's relevant for them on a personal or professional basis? It all comes down to the research. But I also have to always add, you can't be salesy in this process. You have to let the relationship happen organically the way that it's going to happen. Maybe very similar to how podcast conversations happen. Organic, non-salesy.
Love it. Let's talk about an ad agency, a large ad agency, and what happened with that.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem, in my opinion, we have a whole section for agencies in our technology, and there's some original content that we've created for agencies. And this idea of account-based marketing, the good thing about it is that contract sizes are big. You can diversify your offerings and make things really, really juicy. And you can be an agency of record for years, if not decades, which is amazing. The problem is that the second...
I'm just showing, if you're watching the video, we're here on dub.com, and they have a lot of industries that they help with. This one in particular is industries/agencies. So you can see some of their specific content for agencies, but keep going.
There you go. There's some logos there. But the interesting thing is that competition is probably the number one challenge that people go through when running an agency, because there's cost cutting, there's overseas, there's we want to go specific, we want general, we want an all-in-one solution. We can't work with you anymore. So there's a lot of different reasons why people clients might say, actually, we cannot work with you anymore, where the loyalty just kind of sort of dissipates, right? So the way that we've figured out to solve this problem is, how do we increase communication? How do we increase transparency? I remember working for an agency, and I will not mention the name, but there was zero transparency from week to week. No one would know what was happening to our ad accounts. Like, where was money being spent? What are the conversions? We had no idea what was happening. And we had to wait for that 1 hour meeting every week. And in that meeting, how can you expand on information if you only have 1 hour to talk about 7 or 8 different topics? So we always recommend to people, increase the amount of communication that you're doing throughout the process. Send them a 3-minute video, giving them an update on what's new with Facebook. How are those TikTok ads performing? How are those LinkedIn, $15 CPC ads performing there? Are they actually driving conversions? Give that type of information as quickly and as often as possible. And then if you can, use a platform. There's Reich. I think that one is a popular one. There's Asana, there's Bootcamp, there's Monday.com. There's so many different platforms out there that allow people to increase their communication. Ironically, we've built a lot of integrations with those so that people can capture videos and just send those videos over. One of the things that we love to say is replace a 30-minute meeting with a 30-second video. And what I mean by that is, instead of having to jump into a Zoom, and go through a bunch of screen recordings or go through a bunch of data, some spreadsheets, updates. You can craft a short email and you can have a quick screen video in a very short amount of time that might convey a lot of the most important information. And then, of course, this is a dialogue back and forth. But the key here is transparency, communication and content, really, education, information. And that really builds trust.
Yeah, I love that. Replace a 30-minute meeting with a 30-second video. I'm sure a lot of agency owners would like that one.
Yeah. Watch it. Watch what happens. I mean, it's amazing how you can take 6 slides and you can turn it into, let's just say, a minute-long video. It's amazing how possible that is, if you just get to the core essence of what you're trying to say. It's a pitch. It's an elevator pitch, The cool thing is that while I'm talking, I can be showing stuff on my screen. So it's visual communication. I don't need to mention those logos. I don't need to say, we've worked with X company, Y company, and Z company. That's a visual on the screen. This is one of the first rules of filmmaking: show, don't tell. So if I were to just say, hi, it's Ruben from Dub. I wanted to share some information on how we help agencies. Here's some people that we've worked with. Here's some case studies that we have and some specific results on some wins. I'd love to connect. If I can show visually what I'm talking about throughout that entire experience, watch what impact that makes. And if you can show their website and some of the specific things that you've discovered in their world, that really makes an impression. When I was in the agency world, one of the things that I loved to do was to find a problem on their website. And I never did this in an arrogant way. I did this always in a very humble way. But I would find something like, oh, your SEO or your domain reputation, or there's a broken link or something, right? ADA compliance, whatever it may be, GDPR. I'd always find something that's kind of noteworthy and just like, hey, I noticed this is something that you should know about. If you ever want to talk about it, I'm happy to be a resource. Or in fact, here's a link that you can do your own research, right? And all of a sudden be like, thank you so much for pointing that out. I did not know that. And now all of a sudden they have some internal dialogue, and either they love me or they hate me at that point because I found a bug. But hopefully there's alignment, and the conversation at least can get started.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, adding value is really the goal, and to form a real relationship. I love to, Ruben, as I look at the page, if you're watching the video, you can see I'm scrolling down here. I love to hear about the decision of having a starter package that's free, right? Because, again, this costs you money, right? When you have a free package, obviously it's that balance of creating a frictionless process with, running a business. So talk about the decision to have a free version.
Yeah, this is one of the levers in the SaaS world that we can do, right? So one of them is there's the option where you give a free trial and then you have to pay, and then there's the option where you have a free option and then you can stay on the free option or you can upgrade it, right? So those are sort of two kind of choices, two options, I would say, in a very specific choice that SaaS founders have to decide upon. And the reason why we chose not to require a credit card, either A, during the sign-up process, or B, after the free trial period, was because we understand that it takes time for people to feel comfortable doing videos. There's tech hurdles. There's, self-confidence issues. There's actually a lot of things that people have to go through in order to finally get comfortable recording video. And, if you think about it, public speaking, people are more scared of public speaking than they are to swim with sharks naked. I don't know, something funny, right?
Right.
We've all heard that stuff before, right? So video is kind of like it's a form of public speaking. I mean, you can click stop or cancel. It's not like you're in you're at HubSpot's inbound conference at a big stage with 1,000 people in the audience and you forget what you're going to say and you just lose your stuff. It's not like that. It's a more controlled environment, but at the same time, it's, you're on a stage, that your video is out there, maybe in perpetuity. And for some people, there's a confidence hurdle when it comes to that. So we realize if we want to be empathetic, we can't just be like, all right, gun to the head, you got 2 weeks. If you don't, then you're out. And sorry, goodbye. We realize that people need some time with that, right? The other thing is that we realize that if people start to use our platform, then our brand gets out, similar to Zoom. Now, if you sent me a Zoom link, when I saw the Zoom link, instantly it's Zoom. I trust Zoom. I'm going to click on that. I'm not going to have an issue with it. So we have sort of a secondary duty.
That makes sense. Yeah. They're sending it out, and the free, it's got the Dub logo, it's got the Dub URL, and people are being exposed. The more videos people are sending, they're being exposed to Dub.
Yeah, exactly. So that we call, there's really two factors of that. One of them is this idea of trying to gain brand ubiquity, which is what Zoom has done. And that makes it so that when someone attends a Zoom meeting or fills out a Zoom form, that the conversion rate's much higher because there's trust. They've heard of that technology. So they don't have fear about clicking on it. And then the second thing is, our marketing. It's our social coefficient, right? So every person that uses Dub and then sends a video to someone else, our brand gets out there, and then theoretically we can get another customer. And then what that does is it allows us to grow our company, to grow our revenue, but that also allows us to reinvest into the business, and then B is keep our costs down. Like we could easily have our cost be $150 per month per user. Like there's a world where that happens. Salesforce SaaS integrations price like that all the time. A lot of coaches even tell, hey, 10x your prices and watch what happens. We didn't want to do that. We wanted to stay a little bit reasonable. We wanted to make it so that,
super reasonable.
It's a volume play.
Yeah.
It's a volume play. That's what you sort of have to do in SaaS. I think that's a sign of a healthy SaaS company where they figured out, how can I get some level of scale? But of course, we don't want to give away our technology because we want to invest in it, and people associate value based on the perception, right? So if we were to make our prices $1, we'd actually probably do a lot worse because people would have a very, poor perceived value.
Yeah. No, I love this. It's super. It's almost like a no-brainer for a company, I think. How hard was it to get the URL? Dub.
10 grand.
DUBB.com seems like it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it was, we started out as dub.co, and then I was trying to get dub.com. I always love the word dub. It's like a recording. There's something interesting.
Makes sense.
Dub, like rims. There's that whole thing, like car rims. DUB is like a car rims over 20 inches. It's kind of a funny subculture. So it kind of rolled off the tongue. And so early on in the process, I sort of made that a target, like I'm going to go acquire that domain. And I started to negotiate, and I started to go back and forth with the owner at the time, and we landed on that price. God, to get a 4-letter domain name now, that's a word in the lexicon. It's become very expensive. So we've had some significant offers on that domain. But we're like, hey, we're running a business. Sorry, we're not just going to sell our domain here. You get funny emails, but I would encourage people to, .coms are cool, but they're not essential anymore. There's a lot of great domains out there. .ai, .io, .co is a great one. .agency. I mean, that's a cool one. If you're an agency, .agency, I like that, So I would say don't get too stuck on the domain. It really doesn't matter. At the end of the day, your brand, your logo, your feeling, your essence, that's really what matters.
How are people, Ruben, using the SMS campaigns and two-way SMS messaging? I don't think I've ever seen a video platform have those features.
Yeah, definitely. I'm able to do a screen share in a moment if you'd like to see that. But
yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So I'll just sort of set us up here. So I think what's really interesting about SMS.
By the way, Ruben has no idea what I was asking on this whole call. So, but thanks for playing along.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. I'm always ready, but unless I'm not. So the interesting thing about SMS is that SMS is sort of like the Wild West of marketing. There's not there is some regulation, but there's not regulation and sort of etiquette rules the same way that there are with email. If you misbehave in email, you will get punished. Period. There is absolutely no way around this. Google and Outlook and all the other email servers out there have figured out ways to figure out if you're mass blasting emails And if enough people report your domain or your email as spam, you're done, you're finished. And then you have to start from scratch. You have to warm up a domain and then go through the whole process again. So there's sort of this vested interest, if we are going to email market, to have really good email hygiene, to make sure we clean our list, to make sure that we understand who we're sending this out to, because if we misbehave, once again, we're going to get blocked. With SMS, it's not quite like that just yet. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is not because people should take advantage of this medium. That's not why I'm saying this. The reason why I'm saying this is because we all need to do the diligence to understand how we can have really good SMS, right? Campaigns, how we can actually go through the process. When are we allowed to send an SMS to someone? Can we go buy a list of phone numbers and just, cold SMS people? What is that going to
I've never heard of someone doing that, but yeah.
Right? What does that look like? And these are really important questions to ask ourselves. At the end of the day, just ask yourself, what kind of SMS, mass SMS have you responded to? If someone sent you a cold SMS, what did that look like? Did you actually say, yeah, I'd love to click on that and fill out that form or put my credit card in? Or did you say, stop, unsubscribe? So the thing, I have to start with that preface. Here's how to, it's very easy to send an SMS campaign on Dub. You configure your sender, Twilio. I like Twilio, simple texting, sales message, Amazon, couple, configurations. You can decide which one's best for you. You put your message in with some personalization script, first name. This way, every person, Dub has a CRM system. So every person, every contact in your CRM that has a first name will actually have the first name displayed in the text message. And then, of course, have a link right here. And that link produces, depending if it's an iPhone or an Android, it displays like a thumbnail, like an image, a thumbnail for the link itself. It's called the Meta OG image. So that sometimes looks nice. And then you select a video, and then you just send it, right? You just blast it out. You send this out, save it, and then go to your campaign builder, and then poof, it's gone. The other thing that you can do is you can build an automated workflow. So for example, if I wanted to have an automated workflow and say everyone that did X, like filled out a form, I added them to the CRM, I could create a task for myself. And then I could also create an action that sends an SMS. And here I have send email or SMS. And then I can, of course, select my SMS that I just wrote and then have this trigger and send, right? So once again, I would recommend that people do their research to figure out, what is the right etiquette. I would say do not SMS cold contacts. You're going to get a lot of stops and unsubscribes and some hate mail. Don't do that. In fact, the provider might even block you. So just do your research. However, if you do get people's phone numbers on a form, opt in. This is a great way to send them an ebook. This is a great way to send them a calendar booking link. This is a great way to send them that Acuity link or a YouTube video because they opted in. And that's just efficient because our devices are right in our pocket and the open rate on SMS is 98%.
In your platform, it's two-way. So if they respond,
yeah.
Can you respond back then within the platform?
Definitely.
Yeah.
You can send a message back.
So I could see people using it for their clients, possibly, because clients sometimes just want to respond via text, but you don't want to give out personal cell phones. So when you're using it in Dub, are they opting in? Are you sending a message to opt in, or are you just sending them a message because you have them as a contact?
Yeah, for us, it's all opt-in. What happens here is that someone will sign up to Dub and they will, I just kind of gave a sneak peek of what that two-way SMS looks like. It's just a traditional kind of SMS thing. It's also available on the Dub mobile app. But I think what's interesting for us is that if someone signs up to Dub and then they put their mobile phone number in, then we do a verification and then we send them a link so that they can attend the training. And that has been positive. We don't get angry, stop, unsubscribe messages to that because they signed up, they filled out a form, and now we're providing education, and then for the record, we're not salesy in the trainings or the webinars that we host either, because that's just going to cause, sort of a bad experience.
Yeah. First of all, Ruben, I want to thank you. I have one last question. Before we end, I want to point people to check out Dubb.com, DUBB. dub.com to learn more. It's a really slick platform. I've used it myself. So thanks for the value you create and provide for people. My last question is mentors on this journey in entrepreneurship. Who are some of the mentors that stick out to you and maybe a piece of advice that they've given you?
Yeah, I really like this question. I think that for me, my first mentor is my father. And the specific thing that I learned from my dad is to talk to strangers, because we grow up, a lot of us are taught to not talk to strangers, but in fact, talking to strangers is where you learn about humanity. And I remember as a young kid, I would be embarrassed when he would talk to, the taxi cab driver or the person at the coffee shop or the restaurant, and just someone stranger on the street, right? And I'd feel embarrassed, and I'd like do that whole thing with my elbow saying, stop, embarrassing me. And then I realized what he was doing, because at some point the knowledge was starting to sort of self-perpetuate. And as he started to talk to more people, he knew more things. And then all of a sudden, I remember it was like I put the puzzle together. I was like, oh, he talks to people so that he can learn. And then he talks to more people. And then he shares the information that he learns from those other people. And then he's just expanding the knowledge base. And it's basically like the internet in your brain, And I was learning, and I was quietly learning throughout this entire process. So I think the importance of really listening to people is so valuable. If you notice in society, some of the most successful people are in fact some of the most quiet people. This is an old Confucius quote, wise man no speak, dumb man speak, So listening, I think, is a really important thing. So I learned that from my father for sure. I think Napoleon Hill, I think he taught us to burn the boats. And I think that on another podcast, we should talk about this idea of, taking your safety net out. Like, what would happen if you actually did that? Like if you're forced to be successful, burn the boats, Google that one. That's a cool story. General Cortez, kind of a violent story, but
Ruben, I want to be the first one to thank you. Everyone check out dub.com, more episodes of the podcast. And thanks, everyone. Thanks, Ruben.
Thank you so much.
What I got, you can't buy. It resides between my eyes. Walked through the fire, came out better on the other side. See, life's like a beach if you find the sailing right now. I'm feeling like 100 grand.